Hi everyone, I'm Stan Mallow. Welcome to Paranormal Yakker. My guest today is Jason Offutt. I'll be talking with him about his book, Chasing American Monsters. It's an incredible collection of over 250 creatures, cryptids, and hairy beasts from every state in the Union. Jason Offutt, welcome to Paranormal Yakker.
All right, thank you very much for having me on the show. I really appreciate this.
My pleasure. Looking forward to it. You, Jason, have authored a number of very popular books on paranormal topics, in addition to several novels, and you also teach journalism at the Northwest State University. Do you recall when you first developed an interest in writing, and specifically writing about sci-fi and paranormal related topics?
My interest in writing goes back to when I was about 10 years old. I remember reading The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and found out that the author was from Missouri. And I'm like, I'm from Missouri. I can do this. I want to do this. I told my parents that I wanted to write books, and they thought it was hilarious and, rubbed my head and sent me off to play. But that's when I really first got the interest in it about science fiction, monsters, all that stuff. I was always that kid who would rather watch a monster movie than from the 50s. I married an alien from outer space, that sort of thing. I was always more interested in those kind of movies than sometimes watching the baseball game. So I've been interested in the paranormal all my life.
Chasing American Monsters, which is very nicely illustrated. I compliment you on that. Details the origins, appearance, and behaviors of bizarre and terrifying creatures. I'll now ask you about a few of them. What, Jason, can you tell me about the black dog of Hanging Hills, a hound that has haunted central Connecticut for over 100 years?
There are stories of black dogs go back a long way in the British Isles. The hellhounds and that tradition came over here to the United States when the British came over. The black dog of Hanging Hills is one of them, although it doesn't look like your normal hellhound. It's not huge and has blazing red eyes. It just looked like a normal black dog. And if you're ever in the area and you see the black dog, the first time's fine. The second time's fine. The third time you may see him, there may be some mischief. It might try to walk you off of a cliff. Some people have said it's an omen of death. So something gruesome might happen at home. But like I said at the beginning, I think it's akin to the hellhounds of England.
The legendary Tommy Knackers were tiny creatures who caused mayhem in the coal mines of Pennsylvania. What kind of mischievous activities, Jason, were attributed to them?
I'm going to take a step back to the old country first before I go to the mines in Pennsylvania. Some of the best miners in the world a few hundred years ago were from Cornwall, England, and they had stories of what they called the Tommyknockers, who were diminutive miners. They were small people dressed as the other miners, and it really depended on what you, the miner, did. What they did would depend on what the miner did. If the miner would bring some extra food in his lunch and leave it for the Tommy knockers might lead them to a strong vein of coal. If you didn't bring any extra food, or if you said anything bad about the Tommy knockers, these little fairy type beings would might lure you deeper into the mines and cause a cave in. So be nice to the Tommyknockers. They came to Pennsylvania when they discovered coal in Pennsylvania. Hey, who's the best miners? The people in Cornwall. So let's get some Cornish miners over. Well, when they brought the Cornish miners, the legend of the Tommyknockers came with them in Pennsylvania. And then during the gold rush out in California, 1849, the miners went out there, the Cornish miners went out there to get rich, and Tommyknockers went there too, and would do some of the same things, lead them to a vein of gold, or get them lost and bury them under rubble. But that's the that legend of the Tommyknockers. They're also blamed for hiding tools and ornery, mischievous things of that nature.
What Jason, can you tell me about the Banshee who's said to haunt the Badlands National Park?
Okay, so you are hitting all of these that I love because I already said the in England we brought over the English brought over their hellhounds and the miners, the Cornish miners, brought over the Tommyknockers. Well, the Banshee is an Irish legend. It's an Irish mythos, and when the Irish moved here, I firmly believe that whenever we go and live in a different country or a different area, we don't just take our photo albums. We just don't take a couple of antiques. We take our thoughts, our beliefs, and our boogeymen with us. And that's what happened in all these cases. Well, the Badlands in South Dakota is really far away from Ireland, but there were Irish settlers there who reported hearing this banshee, this woman's scream out in the Badlands, which is a bleak but beautiful area in South Dakota. It's another bad omen. You hear the banshee scream, the next day somebody in your family's supposed to be dead. These sort of legends are ancient and they still persist over here. I went to the Badlands with my family a few years ago. Thankfully, didn't hear one.
Big Red Eye, sighted in New Jersey, is one of many Bigfoot type creatures you write about. What, Jason, can you tell me about the Big Red Eye?
It's a normal type Bigfoot encounter, but these are, most of the big encounters of this creature have happened at night when car lights would hit it and the eyes would reflect red. So that's where it got its name. In doing this book, I knew Bigfoot reports came from a lot of places other than the Pacific Northwest or the skunk ape down in Florida, but I didn't know that 49 states have had Bigfoot reports. The only one that hasn't is Hawaii. Even Rhode Island has had Bigfoot reports. So regional names are what makes the red eye different than the Ohio grassman or the Murfreesboro monster or again the skunk ape, things of this nature.
Lizard men, giants, and flying humanoids are included in your writings about American monsters. Can you, Jason, provide a brief description of the creatures you've researched from each of those categories?
I am fascinated by lizard men just because of the fact that they go way back into history. In different cultures have talked about lizard people, about 7 foot tall, scaly humanoid lizards. And there was one that was encountered, I believe it was in South Carolina in Scrape Ore Swamp. One of your listeners can correct me if I was wrong about the state, but there was an 18-year-old boy who was driving home one night on this highway through the swamp and had a flat tire and got out to fix it. And after he got it fixed, this lizard monster came out of the swamp and attacked his car. He jumped back in the car. The monster broke his radio antenna, had scratch marks down the side of the car, and he drove right back to town to the police station and turned that in. That's a type of lizard man report. Other type of animals like that, creatures. In Loveland, Ohio, there were frogmen that were seen. About 4 foot tall bipedal frogs. One was carrying what the person who witnessed it looked like a magic wand. They noticed them by the encounters, one of which was a police officer who saw this thing. We're by a river and it dove in to escape people. But yeah, we've had big lizards, we've had big frogs. I think those things would scare me a little bit more than a Bigfoot would, because at least with Bigfoot, we're all mammals, solidarity.
Sea mantas have been spotted in the waterways of a number of U.S. states. You just mentioned about the frogs. How, Jason, did the people who encountered them describe what they saw and what was the reaction to them?
It really depends on the sea monsters, or ones that were in the actual ocean. The people who saw them were shocked, but they were in boats large enough to where they felt fairly well protected, and they were just more amazed than anything else. These sea monsters more resembled, well, I can name one, Cadbosaurus, that has been seen off the coast of Alaska, Oregon, Washington. British Columbia, up in the Pacific Northwest area, which they're just long snake-like serpents. And by long, I mean like 30, 40, 50, 60 feet long. Usually have a head that looks kind of like a horse or sometimes a dog. And again, it's just more, oh my gosh, I can't believe what I'm seeing. However, if we want to talk monsters that are in lakes or in rivers, it is a lot more personal, a lot more frightening, because if you're out on a lake, you're in a much smaller vessel. If you're on a river, you're in a much smaller vessel or on the banks fishing or whatnot. And these monsters, no matter how big, are a lot closer to you and a lot more likely to overturn your boat and maybe snatch you up. A lot of these monsters resemble the Loch Ness monster, kind of like a plesiosaur.
While vampires and werewolves are generally associated with having a presence in European countries, the US has its share of them too. Could you, Jason, tell me about one or two of them?
It's another one of those things that, yes, werewolves are more European, vampires are more European from at least what we know about them. Although were beasts and anything from were jaguars to were river dolphins and were this, were sharks, were that are known all over the world. Same with vampiric creatures. There's one werewolf that was in Georgia. I can't remember the girl's name, but there was livestock that was being killed in outside this one Georgia town, and they couldn't really figure out what the problem was. They thought it was a wolf, but wolves hadn't been in the area for a long time. This was back in the 1800s, and coupled with this, a wealthy family. The mother noticed that her teenage daughter would disappear at night, and she'd go out to find her wandering the woods. And she made the conclusion that, oh my gosh, it's my daughter who's a werewolf. So she shipped her off to boarding school in Germany, and the wolf attacks on livestock stopped while she was gone. And when she came back, I guess she went to lycanthropy rehab because she was fine, and the werewolf attacks did not continue. But her headstone at her grave calls her the Georgia werewolf. So there's one American werewolf encounter. There are other ones. The loup-garou from Louisiana. Again, that's loup-garou is a French name for werewolf. And when the French came and inhabited that area of the United States in the 16 1700s, the legend of the rougarou, it's the rougarou, came with them. And this creature is described as looking completely human. They usually talk to people near the outskirts of a town or near an alley and try to trick them into following them either outside of the city limits or deep into an alley where they turn into a wolf and attack. There are similar stories in Quebec, of course, because of the French influence. And vampires, there are various vampire stories across the country. I think a couple of the best known ones are one was in, I believe, Vermont back during when TB was, we had an influx of cases in the United States. And for a while, we didn't know what it was. This was back in the 1700s. And if somebody would have this wasting disease, it was consuming them. It was suspected, again from European history, that a family member was a vampire and was sucking the life from these people. One of the famous cases, again, I can't remember the name, I apologize, but this girl died, and three more members of her family died of the consumption. Well, when the last one who died was a brother, they came upon the idea that if we dig her up, we think she's a vampire, we will burn her heart and feed the ashes to the youngest who's dying right now, and that will cure him. And they did that. And what they discovered when they dug her up is that she still had blood in her veins. She had blood on her teeth. Her hair looked like it had grown, and her fingernails looked like they'd grown. But of course, that happens when you bury somebody. But they were convinced that, yeah, that she was definitely a vampire, and burned her heart and fed the ashes to the boy, and he died anyway.
The UFO sighting and abduction of two men by alien beings in Pascagoula, Mississippi, is covered in Chasing American Monsters. What, Jason, were your findings about this event, which is now considered an historic one in UFO UAP circles?
Right. And I believe there's only one of the men who's still alive. And the thing about this case is these two gentlemen, one was in his 40s, I think one was 18 or maybe 20 at the most. They worked at the docks, and after work one night, they went fishing. And while they were fishing, they saw an orb in the sky, and it got closer and it got closer. And they were starting to get a little bit freaked out, and then the thing got really close and opened, and these beings with crab claws came out, and then they kind of lost. They woke up later and had no idea what happened to them. They later remembered. They went underneath some medical experiments, pretty typical for abduction cases. But the interesting thing about this is they went to the police. They were put in two different rooms. They told exactly the same story, and they stuck by that exact story the entire time. Nothing changed. Generally, if somebody's lying about it, they're going to embellish at some point. But they kept pretty low, a pretty low profile, and their story didn't change. One of them eventually wrote a book on it, but it was well after the fact. I think that's the reason this is one of the big cases from UFO lore. People want to believe those two. They seem honest.
Should viewers of Paranormal Yakker want to buy Chasing American Monsters and learn about the other great books you've authored, how, Jason, can they do that?
All the books I've written are on Amazon. They're also all available at my website, which is Jason Offutt, JASONOFFUTT.com. I've got all my books there, or the various publishers who publish them. And Chasing American Monsters has been wildly popular. I've been really happy with that. And the follow-up to that, Chasing North American Monsters, comes out in 2025. And in that, I cover all the monsters I could find from Greenland all the way down to Panama.
I think that's great. And my New Year's resolution is I look forward to interviewing you about it when it gets published.
Well, I would love to be back on. You bet.
Jason Offutt, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yakker. Yakking with you has been a most informative experience. Thank you.
Thank you. I enjoy yakking.
Hi, everyone. This is Stan Mallow of Paranormal Yakker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. So that you don't miss any upcoming shows, be sure to subscribe to my free YouTube channel. To do that, just press the subscribe button on your screen.